Oh yeah, boys. Mixed martial arts. Wait.
You threw me off. You were way too late on that, Casey.
Whoa,
Come
that
on.
I was so. I've been so excited. I got like past excited, where now I'm just like, I had like an endorphin dump. So yeah. Casey, we were throwing these show starts now. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We were thrown off.
Sorry, Shaheen threw me off. Everyone threw me off. We were talking other stuff. Guys, focus.
We didn't get to do a weigh-in show.
Yes, I mean, hopefully Casey's throat clearing got you fired up because the UFC is back at Abu Dhabi. And man, they are delivering a banger of a fight card, which goes down tomorrow. In fact, for those watching live at this time tomorrow, right now tomorrow, we're going to be smack dab in the middle of the prelims, which will then lead to an incredible main card and the storyline-filled main event to crown a new lightweight champion of the world. As we welcome you to MMA Fighting's live UFC 280 preview show, I am Mike Heck. So much to talk about, and I'm excited to bounce off of these two gentlemen joining us right now. We have the two minds, the two workhorses, the co-hosts of the MMA Fighting Ranking Show. But if I ran down their resumes and skill sets, we'd be here for a month. So I am joined first by Shaheen Al-Shatti. Very happy to have my bald brethren, my dad in crime, and Alexander K. Lee, the Prince of Positivity. Because, gentlemen, we are on the eve of UFC 280, less than 24 hours from right now. Casey, you are not Sean. We will see you later.
Casey's just too excited.
Oh,
Casey's just too excited right now.
Yes.
It's UFC
Sean,
280, baby.
Now that you're back, I want to begin with you because with every pay-per-view, there is something to be excited about, right? At least one thing, maybe two. The UFC's most recent pay-per-view card was filled with absolute chaos and insanity the day before with the whole Khamzat Chimaev situation. So that was a unique feeling heading into a fight card. But in terms of excitement, in terms of how you feel about this card, in terms of the build to this thing, this one just feels different than most, if not all other pay-per-view cards this year. Is that fair to say? Do you feel differently the day before this card than you felt outside of 279 of any card this year thus far?
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, this is the card of the year, right? Like, if we're just being upfront with it right away, this is the best card we've had all year in 2022. This might be the best card we get for quite some time. I know some of the ones at the end of the year are looking pretty tasty already, but like, this is money, Mike Heck. Like this, like if you don't like this, if you're not excited about this, you're just not a fan of mixed martial arts. Up and down this card, tremendous matchmaking, storylines galore, fights that have, you know, big implications, fights that really matter. And then you look at the last 6 fights of the card. Chef's kiss. You cannot make a better 6-fight run than we end on Saturday morning. I was going to say Saturday night, but it's morning too. And that too, Mike Heck, we have a morning card. I love these morning cards. I know you do too. All of us do out here. So I'm just so excited to wake up, get a little coffee, get a little caffeine in me, get some breakfast, and just have violence on, like high class violence. This is tremendous, man. Everything from this main event on downward. It can't wait.
AK, what's the best word to describe how you feel the day before this stacked UFC 280 card? And we can also I think this is a good time to bust out the gymnastics score, shall we?
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. What else needs to be said? This card, it's the degree of difficulty is super high. If everything goes right, this could be like the best card of the year, one of the most memorable cards ever, I feel. Regardless of who you're rooting for, whether you're rooting for Oliveira, Islam, Aljamain, TJ, Pyor Yan, Sean O'Malley, whoever, there could be so many compelling, like the action itself be compelling. The storylines coming out of the card, I think, are going to be fascinating. We're going to very likely have, our next title contender in 2 divisions, possibly 3 if Beneil Dariush ever has any luck, or if Mateusz Gamrot beats him. There's just, it's going to be such an enjoyable show. So I'm not mincing words here. I'm not getting technical. I'm not nitpicking. If everything goes right, everything doesn't even need to go right. If this is like lives up to a fraction of its potential, this is going to be like a 9.6, like 9.7 out of 10. It's just such a cool card. And even if things go wrong early, I could just see the drama of the main card, the top 2 fights, top 3 fights, just carrying the whole thing. It's so good. It's so good. I'm so happy. It is not hard to be positive about a card like this. It's fantastic. 10 out of 10 potential.
It's actually like,
Sean, yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, because like we've been sitting on this for a while. Like this card was basically its fully formed version in this middle of the summer, right? Like I remember July, I think it was the Gamrot fight was made, and we just looked up and down at this main card in exactly this form, and just be like, oh my God, like this is tremendous. This is great. There's no way in hell this lasts to October. Like this is so far away from when the date it was initially booked, but we did it. We made it. Like the MMA gods gave us one, man. I hope I'm not jinxing it right now, but oh my God, the fact that we lasted this long with this all sort of sitting here and pending, and now we finally are here, it's tremendous.
Yeah, and the MMA gods took a couple fights away from us, but luckily, at least to this point, nothing with major significance in terms of storyline. So, and that's where I want to begin, the main event, Sean, because we have, like you said, we have known about this fight between Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev for months now. We knew that a new lightweight champion will be crowned in Abu Dhabi on this card. Charles Oliveira looks to go back-to-back on the list of most recent 155-pound title holders. He answered one big question this morning by making the weight 154.5, takes on Islam Makhachev. This one is official. And there's just so many storylines here, Sean, whether it's about the matchup stylistically or the win streaks of both these guys or the legacy of Charles Oliveira, whether or not Islam Makhachev even deserved this fight, if he could silence those critics about getting this opportunity because he doesn't have that big marquee win, which again is not really his fault, and just everything that has been built to this point. But that's just a few of the storylines. But what storyline to you, Sean, is the most intriguing about this fight in your eyes? Because oftentimes you like to take us down a different road that makes us think outside of the box.
First, can I appeal to AK over there, Mr. Weigh-ins, the weigh-in expert? I'm not sure how weigh-ins work. Now that Charles came in half a pound under, can we combine this and the previous weigh-in and all together just sort of average it out and retroactively give him the belt back? Just a little bit.
Yeah, he is. Listen, he's been saying the whole time he's the champion. Yeah, that is how these things should work. In total, he only weighed 310 pounds for two lightweight title fights. Yeah, it took me a second. For two lightweight title fights. Retroactively, he never lost the title on the scale. We need to stop writing that. We need to stop writing that this is for a vacant title. It is now in my mind officially a defense. That's how I'm going to view it anyway. If he wins the fight, if he loses, I don't know. Might have to talk about it a different way. But yeah, this half a pound under, fantastic. And credit to Islam as well, also half a pound under.
The czar of weigh-in says so there it is. We've just brought this into existence. Mike Heck, this fight card, you asked about the storylines, right? The storyline that I have my eye on. Normally, I mean, there would be a lot to pick from. There is a lot to pick from. I say normally we could pick through, sift through and try to find an underrated gem, but it's obvious, right? It's the main event. The main event is the biggest storyline of all this massive card in my eyes. It's just tremendous up and down. The what's at stake here, is for both guys. The sort of Islam Makhachev has been this guy who has been sort of destined to be in this spot. It feels like for a long time, ever since he came into the UFC, we were hearing about Father's plan, Khabib's plan to sort of cede the title to him and continue this reign of Dagestani wrestling. Charles Oliveira, in the meantime, has become one of the most just frankly outrageous champions that we've ever had. He's probably pound for pound up there on the most exciting UFC champions we have ever had. He is putting together a lightweight run that is relatively unprecedented, just between him and Islam both, right? The two winning streaks that these two gentlemen are on, the longest winning streaks in the history of this division. And this division has had a lot of very talented fighters in it for basically its existence. So the fact that we have reached this point with these two colliding win streaks, and again the legacy stakes for Charles, because his resume is really starting to build into something utterly unique and impressive in its own right. I don't want to even just invoke the name Khabib already this early into the show, but there are stakes out there for Charles and for what this could mean for Charles, which is why the weigh-in situation last time was unfortunate, because he would be approaching basically the all-time title defense, tying the all-time title defense record for this division. Just up and down the card, if you were to make in a lab a fighter who could beat Charles Oliveira, you would probably make someone like Islam Makhachev. And if you were to make in a lab a fighter who could do very, very well against Islam Makhachev, you would probably make a fighter like Charles Oliveira. So altogether, the way this is sort of colliding at once, it's amazing. I can't wait for it.
AK, you were on BTL yesterday. We talked a lot about Oliveira's legacy, and I let you rant about Khabib. I gave you the floor, and you did exactly that for lots of minutes. But what we didn't really talk about, we sort of glazed over what this fight means for Islam Makhachev. He is very, very confident. His team is very, very confident. Khabib, very, very confident that he is going to go in there tomorrow and just truck Charles Oliveira. This fight keeps that win streak alive. He becomes the champion. He becomes the best lightweight in the world officially. But how important is it for Islam Makhachev to win this fight with just everything involved here? The confidence, people doubting his resume, some of the headlines, fair, unfair. How massive is this fight for the future of Islam Makhachev?
It's huge, especially when you're the chosen one, when you're, Khabib's dad's, favorite pupil or what have you. Like, and the other thing is, if he beats Charles, I would think we can agree that's bigger than any win Khabib had, right? I mean, as far as quality of opponent, because Khabib's last few wins, Gaethje, Poirier, amazing. But again, Charles beat those guys too. Conor McGregor, huge win. I mean, name-wise, magnitude-wise, for sure, that's, this won't topple that. But I think we can agree Charles is a much better fighter than Conor McGregor, at least at this stage of their careers. So, and even back in 2018, I'd probably pick Charles to beat Conor McGregor. So that's huge. That's huge for Islam. We talked about how much pressure there is on Charles, but I think as we've gotten closer to fight night, people are starting to realize that there is just as much, if not more, pressure on Islam. He's also kind of the hometown guy. Now he's not from Abu Dhabi, but there's this huge fan base that supports him and Khabib and that whole team. So he's going to have the energy of the crowd behind him. I don't think he's ever been in a situation like this. And I'm not saying that's going to affect his performance, but it just is notable, like as far as how big this moment is for him. I don't know if he beats Charles and then becomes like as big as Khabib did. After Khabib beat McGregor, he was like a legitimate draw in his own sense. I don't know if Islam reaches that yet, but he certainly gets there on the way. If he puts on like a really commanding performance over Charles, either by finishing him or like a 50-45, 49-46, like really convincing decision win, I think that would do him well. But yeah, it's just a great fight. And I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, we mentioned earlier like that we didn't, we lost a couple of weird fights to keep this card alive. We should also say I think the MMA gods may have put some of the heat on Jose Youngs. Jose Youngs, who has been on site all week doing amazing work. Check out his interview with Dana White, by the way, that went up this morning. He has gone through hell. He's mentioned some of it on social media, but there's a whole. You guys don't know what Jose has been through to bring you guys footage and video and all this coverage. So he may have taken some of the pain so that this card could stay together. And the other thing I want to say is just going back to the title fight. We have had some great title fights this year, and this might be the best one. I was looking back and I'm like, we got some really great matchups that we want to see, and that most of them turned out pretty good. Ngannou Gane, Yuri and Teixeira, maybe the most fun light heavyweight title fight I'd ever seen. I was glad that we got the Adesanya Whitaker rematch. I know it wasn't the most exciting fight, but it was a fight we wanted. Edwards and Usman in retrospect, maybe not the most highly anticipated fight, but now forever notable for one of the greatest finishes ever. What else did we see this year? Charles and Justin Gaethje, it was a title fight, even though Charles couldn't win it. That was super exciting. Volkanovski Holloway, that got resolved. We just had so many, with the exception of Esparza and the Namajunas rematch. We've been very lucky with title fights, and this might be what a way to cap things off. I know we have another event coming up we have more events coming this year, but this to me is the peak. This is the peak of the year for me, and I expect it to deliver fully. Just awesome stuff.
Yes, of course. Don't want to leave out Davis and Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno, and then Brandon Moreno, Kai Kara France, the interim title fight. I mean, so many good title fights. But to kind of bounce off that question I asked AK, Sean, who needs this one more? I mean, it's a title fight. It's a main event. It's must win. I'm not a moron, but with the weight miss and being stripped of the title, being the underdog, having that chip on his shoulder, is it Charles Oliveira that needs this more, or is it Makhachev for the reasons I just brought up to AK?
who needs it more is an interesting way to phrase it coming into something like this, right? Because obviously both guys feel like they need it more. Both guys would like this to be a part of their legacy. Both guys would like the financial rewards that come with becoming champion and continuing on as champion if you're Charles Oliveira. So who needs it more is, again, an interesting way to phrase it. But just if you're looking from an outsider's perspective, it does feel, just from my view, that Islam Makhachev would need this more. Charles Oliveira is already Charles Oliveira. If he never fights again, if he never wins again, he is already a UFC lightweight champion who is the all-time submission leader in the history of the sport, right? And he has his trophy case. He has his flowers to a certain degree. We will consider him an all-time great, regardless of what he does from here on out. He's already built that resume. And again, the run he's been on this past, 10, 11 fights, in particular the back half of that, where these last 4 or 5, one of the best runs we've ever seen in the history of 155-pound division. So Charles Oliveira is Charles Oliveira regardless. Islam Makhachev is the guy who has been forever impending. Islam Makhachev has been in this spot where he is this next guy who we're supposed to see as this next great lightweight, but he has not had the fights nor the opportunities to really prove that he is that person. He has been him for years and years and years, right? His whole entire UFC existence has sort of been Khabib leading him by the hand towards this sort of promised land that we are now reaching here on Saturday. Islam Makhachev absolutely needs it more in that respect then, because I think if he does go out there and he loses to Charles Oliveira, the blowback on that, because we have been getting for so long told how good this guy is, the blowback if he were to lose, I think would be pretty tremendous, just in terms of people saying, we knew he wasn't that good anyway. He only beat Bobby Green, and sort of the dissection of the legacy and the resume that will come after something like that. That being said, too, I think one point that I haven't really seen spoken about a lot this week that AK was just sort of alluding to, which is this is by far, obviously, the biggest spot that Islam Makhachev has been in his career. And I remember traveling out to Abu Dhabi for when Khabib fought Dustin Poirier. And that was sort of the first big showcase for Khabib in that region of the world. And obviously Khabib is incredibly popular and successful, and just very his notoriety in that part of the world is extremely high in the Muslim world. And he was treated like an absolute rock star in Abu Dhabi when I was out there. And I would imagine just, watching sort of throughout this week, seeing at the press conference, open workouts, we've seen it. Islam Makhachev is receiving that same treatment to a certain degree. Maybe not as much, but he has certainly been the favorite in the hearts and the minds of the people out there in Abu Dhabi. We've seen Charles getting booed. That is a tremendous amount of pressure that is on that man right now. Because I remember, again, being out there for Khabib before that Dustin Poirier fight, the amount of pressure was palpable. Like you could sense it in the air anytime that man was in the room. Like there was a lot on his shoulders, sort of carrying this region of the world and sort of everybody's hopes and dreams on it. And now that has shifted to Islam, and that's heavy, man. Like that is a very heavy thing to feel, especially if you have never felt it before. I would imagine if you're Islam Makhachev, sort of entering this environment where all of a sudden you're being treated like a rock star and this superstar. So again, there are a lot of factors just stylistically with the matchups itself that are compelling to me. There are a lot of factors just in terms of legacy and stakes that are compelling as well. But even just the little stuff like that of just, this is new, this is brand new for Islam, and it is brand new in a way that is very, very big, I would imagine, around him. All of it, it's just so compelling.
And here's another thing, because we mentioned Khabib, and I'm not going to go down that road of a Khabib comeback or anything like that, even though when Dana talked to Jose Youngs, he mentioned that I'd love to make that happen someday. Look, I love you, AK. It's not going to happen.
Go down that road, Mike. Come down the road with me. It's well paved. I paved it.
But here's why I don't want to travel this road with you, because Khabib's legacy with everything Islam Makhachev does only grows. It grows exponentially. And what's interesting about this whole situation is that a month from right now, Khabib Nurmagomedov could be coaching the lightweight champions, and not just the UFC, but Bellator as well, because Usman Nurmagomedov is fighting Patricky Pitbull. All this does is help this man's legacy, does it not, AK? Like, what is the sense of him coming back at this point?
No, you're right.
So
my best friend,
everything Makhachev, yes.
My best friend, you're 100% right. As long as they continue winning, he has no reason to come back. It's a shame that his boy is about to get choked unconscious on Saturday, and it's going to ruin that whole fight. We're actually saying the same thing. You're right. His legacy is so well taken care of with Usman Nurmagomedov, with Islam, potentially becoming the champion on Saturday. But if that doesn't happen, that's a blow to his legacy, then, isn't it? Then suddenly it's again Charles saying, or people not me certainly, but I mean I might be hinting at it. Maybe suggesting that he beat Khabib by proxy if he takes out Islam, especially if he does it in impressive fashion. I talked about Islam like dominating. What if Charles Oliveira does classic Oliveira, maybe like gets hurt in the first round or drops the first round, then wins by submission or TKO in round 2, round 3. And again, the call out, Khabib's there, the call out, So I think all the pieces are there. Again, you're super, super right. As long as his guys are succeeding, why would Khabib come back? I think he enjoys coaching. He's, again, we've said this all the time, has made despite constantly being asked and still being like a public presence, the last thing he ever does is say like, yes, I'm gonna come back and fight. He doesn't want to do it. But again, that's as long as everything's cruising and as long as the plan is going as it's supposed to. Once Charles Oliveira throws a wrench in that plan, then it's chaos. Then I think Khabib's got to rethink a lot of things.
All right, I've been sucked into this, so I'm just gonna ask you one counter question. Is Islam Makhachev in Leon Edwards territory right now? And what I mean by that is, if Leon Edwards lost to Kamaru Usman, that's it. He wasn't getting another title shot. Are you saying right now that if Oliveira goes out there and finishes Islam Makhachev, are you telling the world right now that this road back to a title shot for Islam is a forever road? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, not at all. If anything, after...
So why would he come back then if it's not a forever road?
Oh, no, hold on. After Charles chokes out Islam, and then Khabib comes back next year, and then Charles beats him, then while Islam's getting a couple of wins back, then Islam has been built back up, and he's like, you know what? You beat me, you beat my master, but I'm getting my second shot at you. Now I'm avenging the whole thing. I'm avenging the whole clan here, and then Islam's story perhaps ends with him beating Charles Oliveira. But this is a long thing again. So no, I don't think he has that long of a road back at all, especially depending how the fight goes.
I gotta tell you, AK, I've been so against this argument, but when you presented that last point, I'm intrigued. I'm at least intrigued by it. I'm getting closer to sitting back on the fence. I still don't think it happens, but if it happens exactly the way that you paint that picture, you gotta put that picture in the Louvre, man, because that's incredible. The current betting line right now is Islam Makhachev -190 favorite, comeback undue Bronx +160 currently. AK, is this line correctly in your opinion? Are you stunned by this at all?
Sorry, Mike, say the line again.
-190 for Makhachev, +160 for Oliveira.
Yeah, like a lot of people, I thought you said -190 for Islam.
Islam's the favorite, -190.
It doesn't surprise me that much. It doesn't surprise me. I was going to say, I thought I heard you wrong. I thought you said that Islam closes I guess not closed yet, but had become the underdog. Man, there's just a lot of people who see Charles as a vulnerable champion, a fun champion, a great champion for sure. But the fact that he gets hurt in all of his fights, now I don't know if Islam's going to come out the same way, but Shaheen said it earlier, like if you're going to design someone who can sort of foil what Charles does, because look, he's great on the ground, he's great off his back, but man, we've seen how consistent, solid wrestling, powerful top control can snuff out even the best jiu-jitsu artists. And Islam has that. He's not quite the level of athlete as his boy Khabib, but I still think he's a plus athlete. I still think he's very good down there. So he's going to go hard. If it's going to be a fast-paced fight, he can certainly keep up with Oliveira. If it's going to be slower, more methodical, he can win a fight that way too. So this is what's going through the head, I imagine, of most bettors, and why I don't know if the line has moved at all, but why he is now the favorite, or if he's been the favorite this whole time. People see him as ascendant, again, as the spiritual successor to Khabib. And if it wasn't for that one loss to Adriano Martins, way like a lifetime ago, he'd probably be an even bigger favorite. If he had this glitzy like 23-0 record, he'd probably be like -250. People would just see him as the uncrowned champ, not Charles Oliveira. So the line does not surprise me at all. Of course, you guys know we'll make our predictions, but I'm Team Charles all the way. But it does not surprise me that people are doubting him. I think there's a lot of Jed Meshew listeners out there. I think that might have something to do with it as well.
We will get to picks. We have a lot to talk about here. But Sean, we talked about this on BTL yesterday, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. What's your biggest stylistic question about this fight?
Biggest stylistic question. Biggest stylistic question is just what happens when these two styles meet in the middle. Because the fact, what Charles Oliveira ultimately has become over these last few fights, and really the 10-fight streak, 11-fight streak is very impressive, but just the last 4 or 5 in particular, this man has weaponized his reputation in a way that is really interesting, and I can't find many parallels to it. Just looking throughout MMA history, right? I was on with the No Bets Barred boys earlier this week, and we were talking about this as well. And the closest comparison we could find was Fabricio Verdum, in the way of just weaponizing his skill set, but also his reputation in a way that he has almost changed the math when it comes to MMA, right? Because lately, in particular, for this title run, when we see Charles Oliveira get hurt, he flops, even remotely hurt, like stunned or whatever, he will flop back to his back. And then there is a choice that the opponent has to make, right? Am I going to jump in to the guard of the man who has the most submissions in UFC history, the man who is, this brilliant grappling wizard, or am I going to let him recover, give him time, and stand him back up? Against Justin Gaethje and others as well, it's just been this sort of thing. Okay, I don't want to jump down on the ground with him. I'm going to let him back up. And that gives Charles time to recover. That gives him time to reset. It's again, just changing the math a little bit more in his favor every single time he does it. And it's a funny thing because, like, we have seen Charles be wrestled, right? Like, we have seen Charles be controlled from the top. Paul Felder almost blasted his head off with elbows. That was the last time this man has really seen defeat or any sort of setback. We have seen fighters use the approach that Islam will likely use against Charles to great effect. It's just not, it isn't recent because people have been scared to jump down on the ground with him. And so that, to me, is what is the most interesting part of all of this, because we know Islam is not going to be scared to jump to the ground and stay on top of Charles Oliveira. He's very much going to be wanting to do that. So if Charles is going to come into here with that same strategy of using sort of the flopping down and inviting guys into his guard, I think Islam's going to probably welcome that. So what plays out from there, the sequence, the grappling sequences, the exchanges, whether Charles can catch something off his back, just all of it. I know throughout the week, there have been people comparing this to sort of like a diet version of Khabib versus Tony for that reason, right? Same type of grappling attack for Islam, and then the chaos factor that Charles has that Tony very much embodied as well. That comparison to me seems apt, even if it makes me feel a little sad, because obviously we should have had that fight 40 times over, and we don't need to go into it. But I do like that comparison to that degree of just this Dagestani wrestling versus absolute pure grappling chaos. Like, what can you do in those scrambles? How can you circumvent a lot of the attacks that Islam and Khabib similarly used? So for me, that is the most interesting part of all of this. Is Charles Oliveira, again, has weaponized his reputation in a way that very, very few fighters ever have. And Islam is not the type of guy to sort of play into that, I would imagine, in particular in this type of stylistic matchup. So what's going to happen when those two meet on the ground? Because it's going to happen at some point, and it's probably going to happen within the first round, and we'll see right away.
Yeah, and plus Oliveira punches like a truck, so it'll be interesting to see who actually puts together that first sequence. But we'll go to picks, AK. I think we already know yours since you've just painted this incredible picture. How does Oliveira win, AK? I can't hear you. I can't wait to actually hear this.
I want to thank everyone who voted in the poll. I might start a new poll soon, but this is the same poll I ran during the weigh-in show. Just which fight are you most excited about? Top 3 fights or other, and pretty consistent results. 80% for the main event. Again, I don't think this says anything poorly about the co-main, which we'll talk about, or Yan versus O'Malley. Just kind of how, like I said, how perfect and how well timed this main event is. So I'm glad people are jacked for it. I'm jacked for it, and I'm picking Oliveira win all the way. I've been on the Oliveira train since, God, I don't know, after the Kevin Lee fight. The Tony Ferguson thing, definitely, like when he beat him, I thought that win meant a lot. Maybe less so in retrospect, but I'm picking him to win every time. I'm just going to keep riding it. People keep doubting him. Some people on the MMA Fighting staff keep refusing to give him the number 1 spot in the rankings. I won't name him. I honestly think Islam's going to come out really hot. I think he's going to give Charles some problems on the ground. I think I mentioned this on BTL. We could see like a 10-8 first round for Islam. Just gets him on his back and it's just pound on him. And Islam's, and Charles defending himself, throwing up a few submissions, doing enough obviously not to get stopped. He's getting hurt but not in real danger. But just dominant first round by Islam. Some significant strike counter, like Islam outstruck him like 54-2 or something in the first round. But then that dog Charles Oliveira just comes out and finds a way to sting Islam's second round, clubbing and subbing, takes his back, chokes him out, and then calls out Khabib, and AK's plan stays in motion.
Sean, what do you got?
Oh man, I've gone back and forth on this quite a bit. I know some of us on this website have felt very strongly about our picks when it comes to this matchup for a very long time. I think AK is probably in that camp as well. I've been back and forth, man. I'll be honest. I was on the Charles Oliveira train very early on during this winning streak, this run. I was sort of championing him when he was sort of that underrated contender who wasn't getting a look. But a funny thing happened because when he started actually fighting for titles, I haven't gotten a single one of his title fights right. I don't think. I think maybe I picked him over Michael Chandler, but other than that, I picked Gaethje, I picked Poirier. Like, I just can't seem to get this right. And so, for the sake of Charles Oliveira and not changing things up, I'm just gonna keep it going. I really do feel like this is Islam Makhachev's fight to lose, just stylistically. He is the perfect fighter you would build to circumvent someone like Charles Oliveira and really counter a lot of what Charles does. I really feel strongly that Islam can take Charles Oliveira down and sort of sit in top position and avoid the danger and sort of exhaust him out slowly, grind him out slowly. I'm not going to pull out any of the old cliches about Charles Oliveira is a quitter. Charles Oliveira gives up when going gets tough. That's absolutely ridiculous, and we know that. We've seen it. He's proved it over and over again. He is the farthest thing from a quitter at this point in his career. That being said, I do think Islam Makhachev will wear him down over the course of 3 or 4 rounds and then pound out sort of a 4th round TKO type of situation and become new. That's just how it looks to me, but I would not be stunned either way. And again, if Charles Oliveira can overcome this after continually being doubted over and over and over again, and now to come in once again as the underdog in this title fight, and if he's able to do it again, we're looking at easily one of the greatest lightweights and just generally one of the greatest fighters and most remarkable careers we have seen in the UFC in a long, long time.
I've said this many times on Heck of a Morning, a lot this week, so I'll say it again here. Everything on paper tells me Islam Makhachev wins this fight. And I think a lot of the salesmanship about Charles Oliveira off of his back, yeah, there's some truth to that, but I think it's a little oversold, if we're being honest. And there's plenty of past evidence to support that. But here's the thing, and I'm kind of thinking like Sean on this, but in a different way. In these last 3 or 4 fights for Oliveira on this incredible run, it seems like Oliveira should lose to Poirier, should lose to Gaethje. You could even make a strong case for losing to Michael Chandler. And the man just keeps finding ways to pull the chaos card out of the deck, slam it on the table, and just love it before delivering some just ridiculous finish. So I have no technical breakdown for this prediction. This is purely vibes, but I'm playing the Ric Flair card. And even though he doesn't have the title right now, Charles Oliveira is the man, and to be the man, you got to beat the man. And until I see somebody actually beat this man with my own eyes, I'm done doubting him. This man is just defying logic right now. It doesn't make sense, this run that he's on right now, and it's going to end at some point. At some point, he's going to dive into the fire a little bit too deep. But until I see that, I'm picking Charles Oliveira. I'm not doubting him anymore. So my official pick, with just pure guess, Charles Oliveira, 2nd round KO, TKO. That's what I'm going with. And very little confidence in that pick, but I'm just done doubting this man. But I can't wait. We could spend another hour and a half on this fight, but we're not going to, because I want to move to the co-main event. Maybe the best skill for skill fight on the entire card. It's for the bantamweight title. Aljamain Sterling defending against the former champion, the 2-time champ, TJ Dillashaw. Sean, this fight rules, man. And yet, if most fans could rank which fights they're looking forward to the most, this one might be 3rd, maybe even lower, which is really interesting. So your thoughts about this fight for the 135-pound strap?
You're right. You're right, Mike Heck. This fight does rule. And yeah, it's not getting the attention I think probably that it should. And it's not any secret why, right? Look at this fight in an absolute vacuum. Skill for skill, style for style, like the actual matchup itself is compelling. But if you sort of extend outward and look at it more broadly, there's a lot of factors that I think are playing into people's not apathy towards it, but maybe lack of excitement compared to relative to the other fights, right? Aljamain Sterling, it still feels like doesn't get a lot of the respect that he deserves from the fan base. He's not a very beloved champion right now. He certainly doesn't do himself very many favors in that regard, just publicly with some of the things that he sort of does and says and just et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to get into it. And then on the other side, TJ Dillashaw is a cheater, right? Like he's just a guy who came off a very long suspension for cheating in a very egregious way, and then won a controversial decision that I think a lot of people, myself included, felt like he didn't actually win against Corey Sandhagen. And also he kind of circumvented and ended this magical run that Jose Aldo was on, because it felt like for a lot of people, myself included again, that Jose Aldo should have gotten this title shot as sort of this last legacy fight because he had earned it, rather than the guy who had cheated and won one controversial fight and then sort of coming back just because he has a big name. So I think that a lot of that plays into it. That being said, it is still just a magical fight stylistically. Aljamain Sterling is the backpack of all backpacks. He's the guy who can shoot 24 times and he only needs 2, right? Like against Petr Yan, he went 2 of 20 or something like that on takedowns. But those 2 were all he needed to get the job done. And TJ Dillashaw is just one of the greatest bantamweights we've ever seen. Very entertaining fighter in and of itself. A striking style that is extremely difficult to emulate in training, extremely difficult to sort of adjust to on the fly, but also a very strong wrestler as well, who has one of the highest takedown defensive percentages in the history of this division. And so that in and of itself is interesting, right? Can Aljamain do what no one else has really been able to do to TJ? I love it. But I agree with you that this fight is sort of flying under the radar when it comes to the big ones on this card.
Where's your head at with this fight right now, AK? We talked a lot about legacy and why it's flying under the radar yesterday on BTL, but we didn't spend a ton of time on the matchup itself. What do you think is we're a little over 24 hours away from it happening?
You're muted again, AJ.
We are just on fire today.
My button's a little finicky. I press it. It's just not. Anyway, stylistically, I love it. Like, I think on paper, this to me looks like a TJ, like a fight that leans very heavily towards TJ, like from what we know of his skill set. By the way, a lot of my thinking about this fight comes from the amazing episode of No Bets Barred that Shaheen was on with Connor and Jed Meshew. Amazing. Maybe the best, most irresponsible episode of No Bets Barred ever, and I recommend everyone listen to it. And of course,
why irresponsible?
Listen to it for recreational purposes, people. No, don't bet on MMA. And I always say that. Don't bet on MMA. I certainly wouldn't, and I certainly wouldn't do it taking the advice of three geniuses, Connor, Jed, and Shaheen. But it was very intriguing. I'm saying if I were a betting man, I might listen to some of the bets they threw out there. I'm just saying. I'm not telling people to do it. I'm just saying. But yeah, one of the I'll let Shaheen say, like, there's actually a really big age related factor here, which I won't dive into too much again. That Shaheen brought up, which kind of blew my mind when it was brought up. Sort of like a record that would be broken. But yeah, I love TJ. Listen, he's a great wrestler. I think people forget that he was kind of a wrestler first, who just worked super hard into striking and got coached by the right people, and is now thought of as one of the best strikers at 135 pounds ever. He kind of took that Dominic Cruz style and made it his own, improved on it. He's got a lot more power than Dom has ever had. I thought he beat Dom in the one fight they had. It's a shame they never rematched. He did lose a decision there, but so on paper, again, it really feels like Aljamain Sterling is ripe for the picking. That might be unfair. It might be because he won the title by DQ. It might be because his rematch with Vic win over Yan wasn't convincing to a lot of people, and it was a super, super close fight. So it's not as if Sterling has been a dominant champion. And there was even fights before he became champion, which were, he won. There were some decisions he won that are somewhat forgettable. So people do not view him on the level of TJ Dillashaw, of Dominic Cruz, of the guys we look at as the best. People were saying that if Jose Aldo had gotten this title fight, that they would favor him over Aljamain. So I'm a little surprised that Aljo is actually going in as the favorite for this fight. But listen, he's proved a lot of people wrong, I think, with some of his performances. Again, say what you want about the second Yan fight. He came out with the win. He came out with the victory. He did enough to convince 2 judges that he won. Will he be able to do that at 280? Because I do think the fight is going to go to a decision. I don't know. But he has certainly earned the right to be the favorite. I think he's earned a lot of respect from people. And I just wish the stories going to this fight could be a little bit more inspirational. And it wasn't, the guy who won by DQ to win the title versus the guy who just missed a chunk of his career because he admitted to cheating. That's how a lot of people are going to view it. And that's unfortunate because just in cage wise, again, as good a bantamweight fight as you can make right now.
Look, we're all going to have adrenaline running through our bones, our bodies for the next 24 hours, waiting for this fight card to happen. The excitement is everywhere on Twitter. So if you're looking for something to watch, I'm going to give you all a little homework assignment. Go back and watch TJ Dillashaw versus Corey Sandhagen. You're going to view it differently watching it the second time. I promise you. I came out of it still thinking Sandhagen won, but I also came out of it thinking, okay, if you scored it for TJ, I get it. I understand. And by the way, TJ got injured early in that fight. A lot of people forget that. But Sean, currently, Aljamain Sterling is a minus 175 favorite. Comeback on TJ Dillashaw, plus 150, according to our good friends at DraftKings, which, by the way, use the code the MMA Hour. You get a little bonus, a little gift, if you will, if you're playing the ponies tomorrow. Like AK said, to me, this line's a little bit stunning, but what's the pick? Are we going and once again or in still?
You're right. That line surprised me as well when I saw it, because I just sort of assumed reputation-wise, given the legacy that TJ Dillashaw has, that TJ would come into this fight as the favorite. But then if you take a second, right, and you step back and you sort of look at the surrounding factors, it makes a little bit of sense. TJ Dillashaw is 36 years old right now. And I think that's the biggest factor of all of this when we look at this right now. Obviously, he missed some time, and so it's not like he was taking damage during the years that he was out, but ultimately this is still a man who is 36 years old. He's going to turn 37 in February, which is coming right up. If he were to beat Aljamain Sterling, and this is what AK was alluding to when he was speaking earlier, if he were to beat Aljamain Sterling on Saturday, TJ Dillashaw would by far be the oldest UFC champion, undisputed UFC champion to ever hold that undisputed title under 170 pounds ever, right? Like ever, like lightweight, featherweight, bantamweight, flyweight. For the men's side, TJ Dillashaw would be the oldest UFC champion under 170 to ever become champion if he were to beat Aljamain Sterling. That's huge, man. That's huge because those divisions, those lighter weight divisions, are such quick twitch divisions. They're it's speed, it's reflexes, just reactions, a lot of that. That's what makes champions. That's what makes contenders at these higher divisions. And we saw just how TJ struggled to a certain degree against Corey Sandhagen. I know you just said he was injured, but ultimately this is not the same TJ Dillashaw we were seeing fight Renan Barão and Cody Garbrandt and all that all those years ago. He is an older man who would make really, again, UFC history if he were able to do it at this age. And I think that is a huge factor that plays into this. We're not getting the prime TJ Dillashaw. We're getting this post-prime where he's still obviously very good. But I just don't. This would be a much different matchup if he were 31, 32, something in that range. That being said, it does, to me, feel like a very difficult stylistic matchup for Aljamain Sterling. I mean, we know what Aljo is going to want to do in there. He's still somewhat uncomfortable on his feet, and he wants to get the fight to where his bread and butter is, which is on the ground, in the backpack, just all of that. That's what he's about. TJ Dillashaw doesn't really let guys get to that spot. He doesn't get taken down. He doesn't really get controlled on the ground at all. I think Jed earlier this week, Jed Meshew, our good friend, had a great stat on No Bets Barred where I think it was something to the effect of like 88 seconds total. Or I could be butchering that number, so don't quote me exactly, but 88 seconds total was how long TJ Dillashaw has been controlled in his entire UFC career on the ground, which is a very long career spanning a lot of fights. So it just doesn't happen very often. And for me, that is one of the biggest factors coming into this, and I think that's going to be something that's very difficult for Aljamain to overcome, is that idea of where he wants to get the fight is the most difficult place to get it against a guy like TJ. I picked TJ. I think TJ gets this done, but I won't be at all surprised if Aljamain is able to come in and do his thing. Again, TJ Dillashaw is going to be 37 pretty soon, man. That matters most in these lighter weight divisions, and I think that's being overlooked.
It's a great point right there. AK, what's your official pick?
Yeah, that age stat, the age stat and the below 170 champion age stat just blew my mind, man. When I heard that in the show, I was so confident in Dillashaw. I'm so confident because if we're just going skill for skill and looking at the statistics, takedown defense, the control time, all that stuff, it's like, how can Aljo win this? But he's rapidly improving. He's a very strong wrestler. Like we always say, we were saying, oh, he rarely gets controlled. But you could see that being the story of the fight somehow. Imagine if Aljamain he's a bit younger, he's had a bit less mileage. Imagine if he just has more in the gas tank and that wrestling does start going off in like rounds 3, 4, 5. Then we start bringing that up and going like, man, no one has ever done this to TJ Dillashaw before. And MMA is such a business, such a form of entertainment of the never before seen. So is this the first time we see it? So I'm still, again, I cannot go away with what I know of TJ's skill set. Mike, you're right. The Sandhagen fight, it was whether you thought he won or lost, Dillashaw, it's a revealing fight. It is a revealing fight. And it does tell us a lot about this. It does tell us a lot about why Aljamain probably is getting that champion's respect, why he is favored. But I still like Dillashaw by decision. I think he's going to do enough in the early rounds, even if he does fade, even if father time does start, taking its toll on him. I think he'll do enough to win. Could be controversial. I hope not. And it might not be the last, but if it is controversial, might not be the last time that we see these two step into the cage. So I'm going Dillashaw by decision in a really, really competitive fight.
Aljamain Sterling, and I might even be just playing this real safe here. He might be one of the he's a top 10 most underappreciated fighter in the history of the UFC. This guy has just never gotten his due. He's an excellent fighter. The guy's resume just doesn't get enough credit, and it's happened his entire UFC run. Having said that, I do think this is a really, really tough matchup for him. Aljamain said to TJ during the final face-off, because they were sort of mic'd up on the UFC stream, that they ain't wrestling. They're going to strike. He's going to give TJ what he wants. And if that's the case, good luck, man. Good luck to you. I think it's more gamesmanship than anything. But, man, I just think TJ's wrestling is really good. It's very underrated. And like Sean said, with that ridiculous number of 88 seconds, if you get him down, he gets right back up. And I think the guy who's controlled him the most is Dominic Cruz. And it was for like 30-something seconds after like 3 or 4 takedowns in that fight in Boston. So the big question is, can Sterling get the back? He needs to get the back. This is what the bread and butter is. He's got to get his back. And if he can't, what's he going to do? Because I think he's going to be in for a very tough night if he can't get it. And I don't think he will. So give me TJ Dillashaw to win this fight. I do think that the final 2 rounds are going to be a battle of wills. I think both guys are going to fade down the stretch a little bit. But I do think TJ starts to pull away in the later rounds. So I don't think this fight gets finished. I think we're going to the cards, and I think Dillashaw is going to win by decision and make some history in the process. So I can't wait for the fight. I could be totally wrong, and that's the beauty of this card, because we can have these kinds of conversations about a lot of these fights. Now, we could break down the next 4 fights with ease, gentlemen, but then we'd have a 14-hour preview show, and I don't want to do that. So, Sean, I'm just going to let you choose one other fight on this card that we haven't discussed and wax poetically on. Of course, there's the low-hanging fruit of Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley, but everyone's talking about that. So maybe you want to dig a little bit deeper here. What fight interests you most outside of the 2 title fights, and why?
Oh man, you're really stealing my thunder. I was going to take that low-hanging fruit, and I was going to enjoy that low-hanging fruit. Take a big bite out of it, because that's
munch on it. Take a big bite. Munch on it.
It's lunchtime. I'll munch on it a little bit. It's such a good fight, right? Because like, there are so many factors going into this. I think a lot of people still feel like Petr Yan is the best, if not the second best 135er in the world. We don't even have Sean O'Malley in our rankings on MMA fighting. That's how we think of Sean O'Malley as a website, apparently. We don't think he's a top 15 bantamweight. But the jump in competition here is one of those few things. Like, I can't think of many parallels to the jump in competition that Sean O'Malley is having right now, at least in terms of the modern UFC of the last 10 years. Like, we just really don't see this kind of escalation when there haven't been the results to back it up. And that is one thing to me, that there's 2 factors in this fight, right? One is that if this was a 5-round fight, I think a lot of people would be feeling much, much, much more confident in picking Petr Yan to win this fight, because he is historically a very, very slow starter, someone who gives away the first round, who takes in the first round, downloads information, processes it, applies it on the fly, and then sort of approaches the rest of the fight with what he's gotten. You can't really give up one of the rounds when there's only 3 rounds. Whereas Sean O'Malley is this incredibly fast starter who gets all these first round knockouts, and he's very dynamic. He's very explosive in this first round. And then we've seen him sort of start to, if not fade, at least get figured out over the course of fights. And so that in and of itself is interesting, right? This is a 3-round fight. If Petr Yan's going to do the same thing that he always does, he might lose this first round. Then he has to win the next 2. Can he do that? Or is he going to switch up his whole strategy and sort of be more aggressive against this guy who's very boisterous and very in his face? That is interesting, but also just the fact of, like, Sean O'Malley is this guy who he's been in the I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it, but essentially, like, he has been in the UFC longer than you would think, right? Like, if you just like said, hey Mike, how long has Sean O'Malley been in the UFC? I think a lot of people would say, oh, he's been there maybe like 2-3 years. Like, he's still an upcoming prospect. We're on year 5 with Sean O'Malley. And we still have so many unanswered questions with this guy in regards to his ceiling, in regards to what happens when the going gets tough. We have seen twice now things get weird, or, him having to come back from adversity in these fights. Once in the Chito Vera fight and once in the Pedro Munoz fight. And both those fights ended up in very strange places, right? He lost one, the other ended up being a no contest. We have not seen Sean O'Malley come back from adversity. We don't know if he has that in him, that dog in him, to be able to not be that front runner, but to mount a come from behind victory, to overcome, whatever is coming his way, and then and adjust and make the changes on the fly and ultimately come out victorious. We don't know if he has that in him. Whereas Petr Yan's a dog, man. Like, we know that dude is ice cold, and he absolutely has that in him. And so those kind of questions, I'm really looking forward to seeing an answer, because Petr Yan is absolutely the type of guy who's going to bring that out of Sean O'Malley, and maybe vice versa in that regard. So just the way this bantamweight division has shaped up, where we sort of have the stakes with this fight leading into Saturday night, I absolutely love it. We've sort of been calling it a round robin, a Grand Prix style, to see who's going to be the next up in line at 135. And I think we all firmly believe if Sean actually pulls this off and pulls off the upset, he will be getting that title shot regardless of his loss to Cheeto, and the fact that Cheeto's one of the other people out there. That's just sort of how the sport works. So just the stakes involved in this, the questions that will be answered, just all of it. It's all so unknowable, and it's all sort of in the air right now. And I absolutely love fights like this where we have no actual idea what we're going to see when these two guys collide. We think we have an idea, but we could be totally wrong, and it wouldn't be very shocking. So to me, all of it just makes this so compelling.
AK, there's a song, an old song. It's called "What a Difference a Day Makes." And on BTL yesterday, you talked about Manon Fiorot versus Katlyn Chookagian being your circled up fight. But I know you, AK. You're my best friend, and you are not a fan, to say the very least, of any fighter missing weight for any reason, which Katlyn Chookagian did for this one. So with that in there, is this still at the top of your list? Do you want to react to the weight miss, and did anything change?
Still up there. I definitely want to take the opportunity to talk about another fight, but I will say disappointing for Chookagian. Really, I mean, look, it's a tough road back for her to get a title shot anyway. If she beats Manon, I mean, she stops Manon from getting a title shot, but does not necessarily get a title shot herself. She's had a title fight already, pretty one-sided. Her fighting style is not the most exciting, if I'm putting it kindly. She wins fights. Listen, I'm not taking away from what she does. The most important thing to do is to win fights, and she does that real well. So she should keep doing what she's doing. But yeah, missing weight's a bad look. If she loses, it's going to push her way, way, way far back in the contenders line. Because like I said, what she has going for her is that she keeps winning. So even if she misses weight, even though she missed weight, I don't know how much it hurts her as long as she wins, because even if she'd made weight, she wasn't getting the next title fight anyway. So this may just be viewed as a blip. 1.5 is pretty bad. Anything heavier than that would have been considerably worried. When you're missing by 2, but if you're still in the 1.5 range, I don't know if the UFC is going to kill you for it. Casey and I were talking about this before the show, that we at least appreciate that she didn't drain. Like it sounded like from reports that she kind of knew she wasn't going to make it. The weight just wasn't coming off. So she was not the last person to show up. She showed up probably like an hour within the first hour, or a little after the first hour, missed the weight. We found out pretty shortly after she wasn't going to make a second attempt. She had time. She's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So in that sense, at least we kind of appreciate that she knows her body, and she knew what she was doing. But yeah, if you're the UFC, you can't be happy about it. Stakes still the same for Manon Fiorot, so that's good. But yeah, if she loses, this just mucks up that flyweight title picture a little bit more. Thankfully, we've got Grasso. We've got some other challengers coming up. But it's intriguing. But yes, I'll bump it down a notch below now. The Makaya Malcolm Gordon fight. This isn't so much as like, I think this is going to be an exciting back and forth fight. My fellow Canadian Malcolm Gordon, very much being sacrificed to the fast rising Makaya. I believe last time I checked on DraftKings, I was minus 1150 or something like that favorite, which is absurd for a 22-year-old in his third UFC fight. But with everything we know about him, his great amateur experience, his very championship friendly, wrestling heavy fighting style, I mean, the line is reasonable. That's the crazy thing, is a lot of us are looking at that minus 1100 line and going like, yeah, that's where it should be. So this should be a good showcase for him. Probably the last time we see him this low on a card ever again. From here on out, it's fight night main cards. It's probably pay-per-view main cards. At the very worst, on a pay-per-view, he's going to be the featured prelim. So enjoy these kind of moments while you can, because that Makhachev boom is coming if it hasn't already happened. He's going to own 2023. and as Jed Meshew always says, very likely will be competing for titles in 2 divisions. So I want to see him get a finish. That's the thing here. He had a super tough opponent in Charles Johnson last time, so no shame in not being able to finish him. Malcolm Gordon, a good fighter, but a guy who gets finished a lot. So if he controls him for 3 rounds, great. That's cool. But I want to see a finish. I want to see him really make a statement and put Malcolm Gordon away.
Yes, no, and that just shows the depth of this card because no one's talking about Muhammad Makhachev on this card. And how dare you, AK, give the 2 division champion credit to Jed Meshew? Get out of here. It's this guy right here with the 2 guns. Right. Yes, but I'm glad you said that because no one's talking about that. I love me some Sean Brady versus Belal Muhammad. The closer we get to this fight, the more fascinated I am by it. But I'm going to give some well-deserved love
Mike.
and respect.
Do it, Mike. Do it.
To the man who gets none. And
Do
his
it.
opponent. Benil Dariush versus
Let's
Batush
go.
Gamrot. This fight is spectacular to me. It's skill for skill. It might, like, if you take stakes out of this and just put each fight in a vacuum, I might want to party with this little vacuum here because this is just going to be insane. This is going to clean the floor super quick. And this is going to be the most competitive fight on the card. That's my only prediction. I can't predict who's going to win because I have no idea how this is going to go. If you're going to tell me and force me to make a pick, I'm leaning towards the wily vet, Benil Dariush, but nothing in this fight would shock me. Not at all. There is a part of me, though. I will say this. The fan of MMA side that I don't tap into all that much on these programs. I just kind of want to see a guy like Benil Dariush have something pleasant happen to him. Like in the sport. I feel like this guy the MMA gods just don't like this man. And even so, they still might not like him even if he wins, because I still don't think he's going to get a title shot if he does, although he'll certainly deserve it. But I think Benil's okay with that. Like, I think he's accepted that even if he beats Batush Gamrot, he's probably not getting a title fight. But I just don't want to see this man get so close to it and be in this conversation for so long and then losing to Batush Gamrot. It would just be so catastrophic. So that's my fight. The fight's going to be fantastic. I literally have no clue what's going to happen. I'm leaning towards Dariush, but this is probably just because I just want to see something good happen to this man as a mixed martial artist. We also lost a fight. We lost Zubaira Tukagoth versus Lucas Almeida. Weight management issues was the reason. So we're going 12 fights in this bad boy. Main card still fully intact, which, by the way, you can watch live with us. Off to New York first thing in the morning to join GC in studio for the first ever MMA fighting watch party. We'll have some special guests, including a great choice for a fighter to watch the main event with all of us. So stay tuned. Starts at 1:45 p.m. Eastern, 10:45 in the morning on the West Coast. It's going to be chaotic and fun, maybe a bit unpredictable, but that's the way I like to do things. So make sure you join us for that. Casey, my man, baddest stash at MMA Media. There he is, Mr. 3024. Hashtag Mike Jackson's next foe. Ooh. What's up, buddy?
Oh, let's go.
Ooh. Once again, apologies for the opening. It's very early on the West Coast. I just didn't know what was going on. It was just we had weigh-in fiascos like just a few hours ago, so I was up to like 2 a.m. So apologies and just the excitement and yeah. Okay, sorry. I was like, it's been on my mind the whole time. You guys were all blah 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 fights. I was like, man, I only had one job. Just say mixed martial arts. I only had one job. That's all I have to do. So apologies.
It's all good, my man. It's all good. It's all good.
And for a card like
throat
this,
clearing, the throat clearing was actually on beat, so it actually didn't seem like it was.
I think it threw me off. I think I was throat clearing on beat, so it messed me up. All right.
Let's go to the peeps. Let's take some thoughts from the peeps. We'll take a few. We're rolling here. We did pretty good.
Say, it speaks to the depth of this card that we spoke for an hour and like only now mentioned Batush Gamrot and Benil Dariush just fighting an absolute banger for crazy stakes and like just one of the most unpredictable. And like you said, Mike, like that's going to be the wildest fight on the card, probably.
See,
and the fact that we just now mentioned it like an hour in.
There's another one too. There's another one that like literally nobody's talking about at 205. 2 top 10 dudes getting after it, which is going to be even more like. That's going to be just pure chaos for as long as it lasts between Krylov and Ozdemir. But
are both again, the top 10?
Yeah, I think so.
No, Krylov isn't. At least not for us. Krylov.
Is he 11?
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
not for us.
In the UFC rankings, he is. Yeah.
Ozdemir
I'm a little.
Krylov is a Favre.
I'm a little ashamed of AK because Volkan's AK's guy.
Yeah.
He didn't bring him up once. Like I feel like you almost did him a disservice.
No time.
I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that fight. I'm not touching that fight. I got no prediction for that fight. I got no clue how it's gonna go. I'm not touching it. And by the way, we mentioned the Dariush Gamrot fight having stakes. I don't know if our viewers agree because I put up a poll. Who was most likely to earn their first title shot at UFC 280? Sean O'Malley, of course, in the lead, big time, 50%. 50%. Manon Fiorot tied for last is 16%, and then Dariush at 19%, Gamrot at 16%. So I don't know if that lightweight fight does have a lot of stakes.
Is that you seem surprised by Manon? Is that surprising to you? Because that's not surprising to me.
I'm thinking people just think she's not going to win.
Yeah, death taxes Katlyn Chookagian by decision.
Yeah,
right? Like
that's really the issue. Yeah.
Yeah,
We've seen this story.
If you don't
before.
bet on Chookagian, you're out of your mind. Especially
decision.
She's the underdog.
Minus-
She's the underdog in this fight. It's crazy.
And what was it, like minus 240 by decision or something?
Yeah.
Not that I
Chookagian
or plus 240. Plus 240, right?
Chookagian by decision will get you a plus 240. Or at least it did. I don't know what it is right
Not that
now.
Not that I care about those sort of things. That was just a random, off the top of my head, guess.
Well done. Well done.
All right.
Uh-oh.
A Volkan question.
Did Volkan look a little puffy on the scale? I didn't watch the weigh-ins. AK, did
You're the weigh-in. You're the weigh-in expert.
I wasn't looking closely. I don't think he's puffy. How old is Volkan now? Volkan, he's only 33, but he's never been like super jacked, has he? He's like in good shape. I don't think he looks puffy. Yeah, I don't think he looks puffy. That's a little. Come on, dude.
I just think that's the first time someone's referred to a 205er as puffy. I don't know. Just
puffy.
it just popped when I saw it on the screen.
While you're looking, Casey, let me just throw this out. Do you guys how do you feel about the idea of Alexander Volkanovski being the next up in line here at 155? Like, do you like that? Because I don't know that I'm on board with it quite as much as it seems like everybody else is.
I don't know if he is, though. Like, I know Dana said it makes sense, but even when Jose talked to Dana today, he was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's happening or not. So I think it just kind of got blown out of proportion in the media a little bit. Like, those words were twisted into a whole other thing. I just think with the UFC going to Perth, I just think Volkanovski's going to defend the other belt. I could be wrong. And I just think there's so many other factors in play here. One of which, I hate to say it, Conor
you're going to
McGregor.
say it. Yep.
Conor's, especially if Charles wins, I don't think he's going to fight Islam. And I think that's just an atrocious idea for him if he would accept that fight. But Charles, I think, is a big one. And I think it's in play. And I think that's a fight Charles will want. So I'm not ruling that out. Conor always looms over these things. We also got Poirier and Chandler, who, listen, they're both coming off loss to Charles Oliveira. But if Islam Makhachev wins, there's a very good chance that one of those two guys could fight for the belt. So I don't think Volk is as much in play as a lot of people think. I could be wrong. If he is, cool. But I don't know. I think I would bet against him fighting for the lightweight title in his next fight.
We have someone in the comments saying like, oh, I was insulting the lightweight title fight by saying it doesn't have title stakes. The lightweight contenders fight. If you guys think Beneil Dariush is guaranteed anything, even if he beats Mateusz Gamrot, you are insane. You have not been following the career of Beneil Dariush. He literally just got bumped out of the backup spot by Alexander Volkanovski. He thought he was the backup. When this card was first put together, we're like, oh, what a great spot for Dariush. He's got a big fight and could potentially serve as the backup. And that was just completely taken away from him. And Gamrot I would be shocked if he got, even if he like knocked out or submitted Dariush or something. I would be very shocked if he got the title fight next. Like we said, there's the Conor factor. There's rematches that could happen again. There's the whole Khabib thing that I keep pushing. So it's a great fight. I'm not disrespecting the fight. It's one of the most compelling fights on an insanely loaded card. But I don't like. I understand why people are not voting for it as having like major title implications.
Oh, there's zero chance the winner's getting a title shot from that.
That's
fight.
what I'm saying. Yeah, it's a
I
great
wouldn't
fight.
say zero. I wouldn't say zero. There's always a small chance.
Minus a bunch of injuries outside of the fight, like Volkan gets injured or some. Oh, not Volkan. Volkanovski gets injured. No, this fight is an awesome fight on paper, but it sucks for Dariush. This fight, it's just like this is just an incredibly hard fight, and it's just to keep his place. I think.
Yeah, he has truly inherited now that Leon is sort of ascended to as champion and is no longer that guy. Like Beneil is the unluckiest man in MMA for the most part. It seems like, at least of like high level fighters, like he has inherited that mantle. His last few years have been like utterly. You just look at sort of the ups and downs and like what he's been dealing with and all the missed opportunities. Like, sucks, man. It absolutely sucks because you're right. He is someone who is a very fun action fighter. He's very talented in his own right. He's just not the guy who's going to play to the media and give the quippy lines and talk about how he needs to fight for his title.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what Gamrot. If Gamrot wins, then yeah, obviously maybe his next fight could be potentially there. But yeah, I just don't think he has that. He doesn't move the needle enough over in the States, at least. Even though he's incredible, and I think maybe because I thought Tsarukyan won the last fight, even though it was incredibly close. So I think that baggage carries over just a bit. But to the questions.
Talking about scales, Charles looked so confident in the stare down. Islam looked kind of timid. Is the pressure getting to Islam? So, Sean, I'm not a body language expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've seen a lot on Twitter over the last, 45 minutes since coming on here, is that people have noticed the approaches of both guys, that Islam is maybe a little timid. It's all about, putting on a show for the fans. And Charles is just like, I'm going to kill this guy. Like, I'm going to go out there and kill this guy tomorrow. And he's a little more serious and focused about that. Do you agree with that at all? Like, have you seen anything that tells you any of those things to be true?
No, I don't know that I buy into that too much. I mean, that's just sort of who Islam is, right? Like, he's a very low-key guy. He almost like whispers in his interviews and even at the press conference, like when he speaks. He's a very soft-spoken and understated. He's not that big bombastic personality. Even Habib wasn't Conor in that way of just being that big bombastic guy, but he would play into it a little bit. He would have lines and he would sort of, go on monologues and whatever, like get animated. Like, Islam's just not that dude. So I haven't seen anything from Islam this week that feels any different to me outside of maybe just the reception he's getting and sort of his surprise and learning how to handle that. But I will say, I mean, Charles looks focused, man. Like, Charles looks like a killer. Like, Charles looks like that. We say it a lot, but he looks that guy who knows something that the rest of us don't, and he's just waiting to let the world in on his secret. Like, I love that. When you approach fight week like that, and like, especially like bringing the gang and just like everyone on his team has the blonde hair now, like all of this, like I am so into what Charles Oliveira is doing right now, the way he's approaching this week and just the way he's carrying himself. I know the division doesn't have a champion, but if you just showed someone who has no idea what's going on, like these two guys, you would point out that person would think that Charles Oliveira is the champion because of the way that he's carrying himself right now. Like he is standing out in a really cool way.
I would say the dynamic between Islam and Charles is really fun to watch. Just a different person, which is why prize fighting is fun, which is why we're so into this main event, because it's just two different personalities. I completely disagree if the whole Islam looks timid. Watch any footage of Islam. That's just how he is. I think
Islam looks like Islam.
Yeah. I think even for his wins, he's like he does a little I won, and then it's just back to whatever. Just kind of, I don't see that at all. But I want to talk about earlier real quick. Y'all talked about who needs this fight more. I just felt like I had to throw this in. I feel like I think all three of you were like Islam. Islam needs this fight more. It's more important to his legacy. Was that kind of correct?
That's what I said. I don't know about these guys.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. No, I agree. Islam needs this more.
I think it's Charles, because the fact that Charles is a significant underdog, as a 3-time champ coming into this fight, he's still an underdog, because I still think he is the uncrowned champ because he has to beat Islam, and to me, like, he's not the champ till tomorrow night, and like this has always been the fight. I mean, like right now, I think on our rankings we all have Islam number 2, just more of because he just doesn't have the competition. He hasn't faced the competition to really justify putting it over Oliveira. But it's like, I just don't believe like Charles to get that. We know we know he's gonna be a great champ. We know he is a good champ. But to me, he's on that kind of Stipe level, in the sense like, he has the numbers, but he doesn't have that one win. And I think when like Stipe lost to DC or lost to say Francis the second time, I feel like it kind of set reality in, and I feel like that's where Charles is right now, and he has to beat Islam to kind of get over that hump. That's why I think Charles is a more important fight for Charles.
I mean, he certainly ascends, right? Like I
kind of rambled a bit, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like he still doesn't. If he doesn't beat Islam, he still is just a good champ rather than like that Khabib level champ.
That's the thing. He certainly ascends if he wins this fight on Saturday, like, especially if he does it in the way that he's been winning these fights. Like, he ascends into a different plane of all-time greats, just in terms of when we talk about 155. Like, he is on the short list then at that point of Khabib, BJ, Frankie, like Islam, or not Islam, but Charles. Like, there's a few guys there at 155 in this really storied division who sort of always will be mentioned, and Charles becomes one of those guys, I think, tomorrow if he does win. I'll certainly give you that.
Yeah, it's just that's all. I just feel like it's just. Go on.
I think he already is.
I don't
think he's at that level quite yet. I don't know that he's quite reached it quite yet. You think he's already there? Where
I think so.
Okay, let's play this out. Like if he goes in tomorrow, and he loses in a very Islam-esque way, right? Where he gets dominated for 15 minutes and then submitted or pounded out, TKO, whatever. You think we will be looking back 10 years from now calling Charles Oliveira, a top 3 lightweight of all time? Because I don't know that that's the case. If
top 5.
If that's how
top 5. He's already in the top 5. Top 5. Top 3. Like, he's just legacy building now. He is just legacy. That's the importance of these fights, right? I mean, that's huge if he fits Islam. Then undisputed top 3. He's already in the top 5. I mean, I would love it to get to the point where people would, say like, oh, he would definitely beat a prime BJ Penn, or he'd definitely beat Khabib, or that. He has to prove that still. But he's in the conversation. I think he's in the conversation. I think he has at least fought himself and built up a resume to the level that people would say, yeah, I could see him beating BJ Penn in his prime. I could see him beating. I could see him beating Khabib, but giving Khabib a competitive fight. I believe the conversation is there. I don't know how much that changes after tomorrow. At least the Khabib part, the BJ part, probably he beats a guy like Islam. But this is a strong resume compared to some of the previous lightweight champions. And he's won, 11? There's 11 straight now, right? He's on 11 straight wins.
11, yeah.
This run alone cements him as a top 5 lightweight. I mean,
I want to say he's top 5, but I think we're talking GOAT status with
like that next.
He's not there.
I think we already he hit the top 5. I think we're all kind of there. And my big thing is and that's why I just can't. That's why the tomorrow's fight is so big for Charles, because he needs to dominate Islam, because like
I don't think he does. He just needs to win.
Yeah. He's not gonna dominate Islam.
He's not gonna dominate. We know he's not gonna.
He's gonna do something insane.
And that's why Khabib. And that's why, to me, Khabib will still be just the GOAT because of his dominance. Like you say, like Charles versus Dustin Poirier, Charles versus Chandler. They fight 10 times. You don't say Oliveira wins 10 out of 10, but if Khabib fights those guys, you think Khabib wins 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. That's how good Khabib was. Charles he's just he might be the most exciting lightweight champion we've ever had. I think
he's already there.
Okay, let's just say that then. He is the most exciting lightweight champion. And that's just, I think it's just the Khabib Charles thing. It's not the numbers thing, it's about the dominance and how Khabib won. And Charles is just simply just an exciting fighter. Not simply, it sounds like I'm like lowering him, but the excitement I think elevates his status so much more with us. I don't know. It's
just so stylistic. They're just 2 completely different guys, though. Mm-hmm. Like they're just. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's hard to compare. You can compare win for win. Like if we just take how it all played out, because like Charles isn't going to fight like Khabib. Charles is going to fight like Charles. Like,
but Charles fought like Khabib when he fought Ferguson. He just kind of held him. I mean, we forget about that.
A little bit, yeah. But
I mean, Charles can't. He also. That fight.
Right, but he also had Tony Ferguson's arm literally broken, but Tony Ferguson's not a human being, and somehow he willed his way Terminator 2 style to get his arm like back into place so it didn't snap in half. Like that was just freakish stuff.
His knee and his arm, yeah.
It was insanity. It was just insanity. But to say like Khabib's not going to fight Justin Gaethje the way that Charles Oliveira fought Justin Gaethje. He's just not going to do that. And if you told me, Shaheen, that if I told you on the preview show before that fight that, hey, Sean, at the end of this, Charles Oliveira is going to be more chaotic than Justin Gaethje, and he's going to prove it, you would laugh in my face. You would never have believed me. No, I wouldn't. And he literally did that. He literally did that. Yeah, he literally went in there and out-chaos Justin Gaethje. Like, he invited it. No one thought he would invite it the way that he did. And then he swam in it. He did a swan dive into the chaos, and he rattled Justin Gaethje. Like, he had Justin going backwards. He had him panicking a little bit. You've never seen anybody do that to Justin Gaethje. So it's just two completely different styles. I think the Gaethje win was massive for his resume. I know he missed weight and he got stripped of the belt and all that, but I think that win over Gaethje, that was the leap of faith. Like, I think the Poirier one, people kind of went back and was like, well, he got the title shot after 2 wins over Conor. But I think there was the Gaethje win in particular that was like, all right, this dude's the dude.
I would disagree slightly with the final point that you just mentioned, because I think it was the Poirier win. Because if you remember going into Dustin Poirier, even we as a website had Dustin Poirier as the number 1 lightweight in the world. Like, that was the conversation going in, is that Dustin Poirier is the actual champion.
What's this we thing? What's this we thing?
Everyone but AK.
And Guilherme Cruz. Shout out to Guilherme Cruz.
Shout out to Guilherme Cruz. But like, that was the conversation, right? Is that Dustin Poirier is the number 1, and we're just all messing around here while we wait for him to actually be crowned. I will say, like, if Charles wins in a Charles-esque fashion, Casey, sort of going back to what you were talking about on Saturday, it does shift the conversation in a way that I think would be very important, right? Because ultimately Khabib still has that pureness of his record, right? The untouchedness of his run, just the fact that he never really struggled with anybody. Like, that is, no one's going to ever really approach that, or at least like no one in this era is going to approach that. But I do think Charles at that point will have a better just resume overall. If you throw like, hey, what's your best 5 wins? And you put Charles' best 5 wins against Khabib's, like, I think Charles probably outpaces him in that regard.
But
so I don't know.
I agree with you. You have the best 5 losses, and Khabib.
But that's the thing. So, so then that's what I'm saying. It would change the conversation in that Khabib is still probably the GOAT, just purely for the dominance. But if you just look at like the best fighter in this division who has done the most, like the most decorated fighter, the most accomplished fighter, that might actually become Charles at that point, which is that in and of itself, like, that almost is more impressive, because that is a longevity thing, right? Like, longevity, we say it all the time, is the hardest thing to do in MMA, is to be sustained greatness, to be good over so long of a period of time. That to me is more impressive than someone who just gets out in the middle of it. Because if you look at like a lot of the all-time great runs, like if Anderson Silva would have just left after the Forrest Griffin one, right? Or the Stephen Bonner one, like, we would just be talking about him as Muhammad Ali for the rest of his career.
The greatest of all time. He's the greatest of all time.
There are a lot of champions. Jose Aldo. If Jose Aldo just leaves after the second Chad Mendes fight, like, we're just talking about him historically for the rest of his life, just in a very different way than what ultimately played out. So that's the thing, is like, Khabib cut his story short in a way that no one else really has done. And so we have to sort of adjust the way we talk about him because of that. But to me, Charles Oliveira has the resume of Khabib at that point if he wins on Saturday.
All right. Let me ask real quick. I don't want to get too deep into this. How high is he going to go, guys, in your pound-for-pound rankings if he beats Islam convincingly? I have him 4th in mine. I think he would jump. I have him behind Ngannou, Volkanovski, Adesanya. I think I'd jump him over Ngannou. Mike, you have him the same thing. You have the exact same as me, exact same top 4. So I don't know if he would jump over Ngannou for you. Shaheen, you have him 3 already. I don't know if he can go any higher. I don't know if he jumps Izzy. Casey, you have him pretty low. I imagine you jump a few people in yours.
I have him behind Makhachev. Yeah.
Yeah, you have him behind a few people. So I imagine obviously he jumps over Makhachev, maybe a few others. I don't know. What are you guys thinking? Shaheen, does he jump over Izzy?
Like a dominant win?
That's one of those where I need to see how it gets done.
How does it happen? Yeah.
Because if it is a very Charles-esque win where he battles through some adversity and there are moments where it looks like he might be losing and it might be on his way out, I think I'll probably stick with him at number 3. But if he goes out there and just really surprises all of us and does some terrible things to Islam, like, I might jump him over Izzy. For me, Volk is still the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, just because he is the single best, most skilled, most talented fighter in the world that I have seen, at least currently right now. But he has a chance to jump over Izzy for sure, to number 2 on mine.
Wow. He could get to 3. He could get to 3. I could jump him over Ngannou, and it's only because he's had 2 wins in the same since Ngannou had his, and Islam's a big one. So I don't think he jumps Izzy just yet. Izzy's getting ready to fight Alex Pereira. Obviously, if Izzy loses, I mean, Charles Oliveira could be the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter on my list. Yeah. But we'll see.
Ooh, what a big card. What a big card. All right.
By the way,
so
ranking
good.
show coming out Tuesday.
That's right.
Let's go. I
This-
can't wait.
we are gonna have some stuff to talk about next week. That's for
I haven't
damn
been
sure.
on in a while. I have to jump on this week.
Get on,
I'm
Mike.
just putting it on the
All
public.
right,
I've not
Mike
been on
Heck's
in a
on.
while.
My
I'm
best
doing it.
friend, get in here.
Let's do it.
I like this question.
Where does O'Malley go in the rankings or title contention prospects if he loses to Pyor Yan?
Loses.
Let me
Not-
say first.
I like
think
this question.
Yeah, me too.
It's a great question. I think Sean O'Malley has nothing to lose. I'm sure he doesn't feel the same way. Losing sucks all the time. He's aware of what everyone's saying, that there's, quite literally a title shot almost guaranteed if he puts on a good performance against Petr Yan. But I think so many people expect him to lose and didn't even expect him to get this fight in the first place. I remember when it was booked, I was like, man, what a great fight for O'Malley. Like, if he loses to Petr Yan, where's the shame in that? This is a former bantamweight champion, a guy who many people still think is the best guy at 135. A lot of people thought he did not, necessarily lose that second fight. It might have been, draw at worst. So yeah, losing sucks. Losing out on nothing is guaranteed in MMA, by the way, but an all but guaranteed title shot. He's not going to be far away if he loses Petr Yan. I don't think it pushes him back that far. He's not even ranked in our rankings. He's not even a Favre. Doesn't even have a vote.
Bantamweight's just tough. Bantamweight's so
Bantamweight is tough. Yeah, there's just a lot of good guys.
Especially globally, like when you're including Bellator guys.
This is true. We include outside the UFC guys. But he could be at 16, 17, 18 if we extended it that far in a lot of our rankings. So, I think this is just found money for Sean O'Malley. As long as he doesn't get embarrassed, as long as he doesn't completely housed. But there's no exposing him. There's no O'Malley's was exposed if he loses to Petr Yan. No, Petr Yan's really effing good. And this getting the fight at this stage of his career. I know Shaheen said he's already 5 years in, but it's still a pretty high level fight for a guy who's only had 10 UFC fights. So I guess 10 UFC fights a lot. Anyway,
that's a lot. That's plenty.
I guess it is a lot. But I am standing by my point that he has very little to lose here, other than literally having a loss in his record.
I don't know that I agree with that, AK. Like
it's not like a short notice fight or anything.
This isn't quite that setup to me. Like there was you mentioned a few sentences in there that felt very important to me of whether he gets embarrassed or he gets housed, because that to me, that could be very damaging. Like if Sean O'Malley has built himself a specific reputation, right? And it's a very internet friendly reputation. It's a reputation built upon the idea of the Cheeto loss wasn't a real loss. That was a win. And I'm still undefeated and all of this. If he goes out there and gets absolutely trucked by Petr Yan, which totally could happen, it is very difficult to sort of carry himself in the same way that he has carried himself within this division.
No, it's not. Not the way his fans are. Not with the way his fans are.
No. I'm not saying he's not going to be popular. I'm not saying people are going to still not want to see him fight, and he's not going to get big fights, because of course he will. He has a following, and people are tuning into the Sugar Show regardless. But it's hard for you to say you're that guy if we can all just point to the time you went out there and lost in 40 seconds to Petr Yan. That changes the math a little bit on the conversation in a way that I think would be very damaging. It would take a while for him to recover from.
I don't know, but Yan is so good, and I think he would so much. And I think O'Malley's been saying the right things. He is not oversold his chances. He's been saying what you would expect. Oh, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to beat him, but I'm going to get a title shot. He's been saying the kind of the rote, pre-fight hype stuff. But even he let Petr Yan call him a street whore at the press conference. He was just kind of
that was amazing.
He was kind of yeah, that was a good one. There really was no comeback to that. So he was yeah, you got me. He's kind of handled this the right way as far as building up the fight, building up his chances, saying I'm going for the knockout. But he really has not said anything extravagant, anything unbelievable that he shouldn't be saying ahead of a fight like this. So yeah, I know what you mean. He won't be able to sell a loss to Yan like he did the weird no contest with Munoz, and then the loss to Cheeto, and keep calling himself undefeated. That's fine, but I think he'll find a way to spin it. He's actually pretty decent at spinning stuff like this. So I really don't think he's going to get hurt too much. And again, having dealt with some of his fans firsthand on social media, man, I'm telling you something, they do not give a crap of what's going to happen to them.
I would argue that Sean O'Malley has the most to lose on this card, in the sense that he is going from an unranked fighter, and he gets this fight, he gets a freaking title shot. When in the modern UFC memory can we recall that? A guy,
Alex Pereira,
maybe, but Alex Pereira had to get through Strickland. At least,
That's the same level version.
But Strickland isn't Yan, and in the comparison to the weight class. You know what I'm trying to say. Sorry. That's why I think this is so big, because this is a lottery ticket for Sean O'Malley. If he loses this fight to Yan, he has to actually earn a title shot after this. To me, if this is a lottery ticket. He beats Yan, he gets a title shot, and this won't happen again in his career. I can't think of another fighter who
you can't lose something you didn't have, though. It's not like he's been guaranteed. I mean, it's not guaranteed. It's not like he had a title shot previously and lost it. You can't lose something you didn't have. You know what I mean? I know what you guys
currently
mean,
right now, like the conversation around Sean O'Malley is future title contender, future champion, right? Like, I don't know that that's the conversation if he just gets demolished by Petr Yan. I think at that point, the conversation is fun fighter, very popular guy. He's going to be a fun, good matchups, but we're not looking at him as this next world beater, this next champion in this division.
Unless it's like a good competitive loss, then I think O'Malley still this isn't a big loss in a sense. Mm-hmm. But if he gets demolished, then he has to truly earn a title shot. That's bad. That's why I think he actually has an incredible amount to lose. I think honestly more than Yan.
But I would say, like, if Charles Oliveira got demolished, he'd lose a lot more than Sean O'Malley has. If Aljamain Sterling got demolished by Dillashaw, I'd say he'd lose a lot more. Like, if anyone gets demolished on the card and any of these big fights on 280, I think the stakes are just as bad, if not worse, for them than they are for O'Malley.
Really though, because like Charles already like champion, he already has the records, he already like is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would disagree with that too.
But how much would he lose if he got smoked, though? If he just gets like 50-45, I think he loses a lot. More than O'Malley.
We'd still look at him as a great of the era.
I think you think of
we just said top 5 ever already. We're not saying O'Malley's a top 5 anything. We're not even having top 15.
Listen, I'm a man of the people. All right, I speak. Yes, us in the media. I get it. You guys are so smart up in your ivory towers of the MMA media. I'm a man. I'm a fan. I speak the language of the people. Okay, and
you're literally wearing the T-shirt of an MMA media website.
Oh, well, I just threw this thing on. I didn't think about it. And I think the people are putting a lot of weight on like the Charles. Like, we know how great Charles is, but I can see the people coming out of the woodwork if he gets dominating, going like, yeah, we knew it. We knew this day was coming. We knew his luck was gonna run out. Like, that's the kind of crap you were gonna put up with. It's gonna happen. You guys, Shaheen.
Yeah, but that happens to anybody.
Be careful.
That happens.
I know. I'm saying, be careful what you tweet on. Be careful what hives you stir on Saturday, because you may have to mute those notifications, because you are gonna get it depending what your take is. I mean, we're all gonna get it depending what we say. Stay off the web. I don't know what to tell people, but I am ready for a lot of these fighters. It sucks. It shouldn't be this way. Like, this is MMA is supposed to be fun, and this card is just fun from top to bottom. It's so good. So I hope people aren't negative. I hope no matter who loses, whether it's Sean O'Malley, Dillashaw, Sterling, Makhachev, Yan, Oliveira, whatever. I hope no matter who loses, that that it's not about people being exposed, not about people like, it's just like, can we just congratulate the winners? Can we just talk about the winners? You know what I mean?
What are we doing right now?
What did this turn into?
This isn't the Kentucky Derby.
On a sense of positivity. I'm going back to my point. Like, this is
freaking cage fighting, man. These men have trained for years to beat the crap out of each other.
And that's fine. That's fine. And then we should respect that. We don't have to go like, oh, Sean O'Malley lost. He's never gonna fight. You know what? He's fighting Petr Yan. This sticks to my original point of it. I just don't think O'Malley has that much to lose. I really don't. Because as much as we're saying he's guaranteed the title shot, you can't lose something you never really had. And he does not have a title shot in hand until Saturday night's over. We'll see.
AK, you've booked a future show. You booked a future show. When we do the first ever Dana White Power Slap League preview show, you are coming on, because we need that positivity.
I kid. I'm not going to be positive about that.
You set the tone about congratulations and handshakes and hugs and tea and crumpets and all that good stuff. Friendship and teamwork, all those good things. But yeah, I think it's a little column A, a little column B here. I think I'm more on Sean's side, where I think he doesn't lose a ton if he like the way most people view this fight is that O'Malley's going to win the first round. Pyotr's going to be like, oh crap, I got to do something. And then Pyor wins the next 2. If that's the case, like, I don't think O'Malley's stock drops all that much. But yes, if he goes out there and just gets annihilated, boy, oh boy, it's not good. It's not a good look. Like, he's not like done. He'll still make lots of money. People will still watch him. He'll still get lots of views. He just becomes more.
He's like a Patty.
He becomes more Patty. Yeah, he's closer to Patty than he is TJ Dillashaw. You know what I mean? AK just wants all the fights to be a tie. Love that.
No, and I'm just saying.
Can't we all just get along, guys? Can't we all just
Listen,
get along?
if you can be.
Why are you guys fighting? Stop it.
No, I'm just saying that's how we should view the results. No matter who wins or who loses, I want our post-fight show to be like, you know what? Everyone did great. Everyone did great.
Let's just call an audible. We don't need to have any fights on Saturday. Let's set up a
why
big
even
obstacle
bother?
course. Big obstacle course out there in Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
We'll sort of do trial runs, heats, different things. We'll do a
Let's
big
do some-
competition.
Ultimate Fighter 1 style
Eating
reality
contest,
show
maybe,
competition.
perhaps.
Ultimate Fighter 1.
Play some Uno. I don't know. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Get some hummus. It'll be great.
Ooh, hummus. I love hummus.
Uno, no stacking. No, actually, no. You should stack plus twos. Plus twos are definitely stackable. That's a whole other thing.
I mean, what else can we talk about here? I think we were good, right? I mean, what a way to end it.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
All this, and we didn't even talk about Belal Muhammad and Sean Brady.
Oh.
That fight rules. I will say this. We can react to this if you want. I actually think Belal Muhammad has a ton to lose. I think he has a lot to lose. Everything. I think
Belal Muhammad might have the most to lose.
Yeah,
exactly. I think he
That's
might
what
have
I
the
was
most
about to
pressure
lose.
on him than anybody else on this entire card. Because if he loses, it is
That's it.
catastrophically terrible. He's not getting a title shot if he loses this fight. But if he wins, I mean, look at the way they're treating this guy. They're treating this dude like a superstar. This is the most over Belal Muhammad has ever been in his career, and it's not even close. Belal Muhammad fighting in Chicago is getting a 10th of the reaction that he's getting in Abu Dhabi. He is a star over there. And if he goes out there and beats Sean Brady and gets a star reaction, I don't think he's going to finish Sean Brady if he wins, but let's just say he does. And the reaction he'll get, that is massive for him. And that gives him a lot of steam. But if he loses, man, whew, not good. Not good.
He's gonna have to win 20 fights in a row to get a title shot if he
Yeah.
loses.
Look at 12-3 in the
It'll be a
UFC.
race between him and It'll be a race between him and Katlyn Chookagian to see who gets the title shot
get
first.
back.
Honestly,
12-3 in the UFC, one no contest, excluding the no contest, 7 straight wins, 11 of his last 12. I mean, this guy has been on a run. But yes, one loss to Sean Brady. God, we could just kill
Which
all
is
that right
such
now.
a tough style matchuk, right? Or tough style,
So unfair.
right? Like
That's
that's
so
the
unfair.
worst possible matchup you could give. Belal
He's
right now.
now the new welterweight Leon Edwards in the sense that you have to win 10 billion times. But yeah, it's awesome. Does a fight like this?
It's awesome.
I don't know. Shut up. Moving on. We're moving on. Forget it.
the wheels are almost off. I think we have one wheel left. Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, all right.
So we talked about it. Stakes are very high in that one.
We ready for the music?
I'm ready for the music. Let's hit it. There we go. Now we know we're done. So, listen, we gave you, 93 minutes here? I think we gave this card enough love. It deserves more, but listen, we have things to do. We got to get ready. We got to get ready for all this. A lot going on tomorrow. People's Pre-Fight Show, 9:15 a.m. Eastern on this here channel. Jed and Casey, I believe, will be tag team in that. And then, of course, CoverageMAFighting.com throughout the entire card. 1:45 Eastern, it's watch party time. Then we'll have your press conference, post-fight interviews with Jose, and we'll have a post-fight show. And then AK, my best friend, I'll see you Sunday morning, my buddy. Some matchmaking. So just because UFC 280 comes to an end doesn't mean we're done. We'll have a lot more for you. But we're done with the show. For AK, for Casey, for Shaheen, I am Mike Heck. Get some rest, everybody. Early day MMA. Good night.
Oh, I like that. That has a good cadence to it.
Yeah.
Early day. MMA.
MMA.
Early day.
MMA.
MMA. Early day. MMA.